Now, I know we're incredibly alike, but don't be confused. We are not identical twins.
Baltimore's greatest duo played together with the same last name on their jerseys, but when comparing the two, the differences go beyond a different cultural background. But first, let's discuss what they had in common. They both were freak athletes that are oftentimes overlooked as some of the greatest to ever play baseball. In 1966, Brooks and Frank Robinson finished first and second in MVP voting. The two most valuable players in the league were the Robinson twins. In addition to their fantastic production in the regular season, they were also able to lead the O's to a World Series championship in 1966. Together, Brooks and Frank accomplished a lot in a relatively short time frame, and it would take them both 10 years in the big leagues to land on that World Series team together. Today, I will be covering Brooks Robinson's story, and MiLB Hatbilly, the special guest for today's video, will be doing the honors of telling us more about Frank Robinson. Make sure to subscribe to him and tell him that I sent you. But first, let's rewind the tape. The first Robinson story starts in Little Rock, Arkansas, the hometown of Brooks Robinson. Born in 1937, Brooks was nearly 2 years younger than Frank Robinson. Brooks Robinson was born to two parents who provided for him throughout the entire time that he lived at home before playing professional baseball. Brooks Sr. was a firefighter and a very talented ball player in his own right, playing semi-pro back in his heyday, as well as playing softball after his baseball retirement. The same year Brooks was born, his father played in the finals of the World Softball Championship in Chicago. Brooks had just one sibling, a younger brother that came along 5 years later. Brooks grew up a Cardinals fan, and his favorite player was Stan Musial. Brooks in grade school started his baseball career as a catcher. He spent much of his free time practicing at the facility across from his home, as well as working concessions at Arkansas minor league games. Along with baseball, Brooks participated in running track and playing basketball to stay in shape. In high school, Brooks played for one of the best American Legion baseball teams on the eastern side of the United States. Following his graduation, there were several major league clubs that were interested in signing Brooks. On Memorial Day in 1955, Brooks Robinson signed with the Baltimore Orioles. Little did he know that he would never suit up for another franchise and would be referred to as many honorable nicknames, including Mr. Oriole. He received a late call-up during the 1955 season, but it would take 3 years before Brooks would be cemented as the Orioles' everyday third baseman. Once he became the regular over at third base, Brooks thrived, particularly on defense. In 1960, he received his first Gold Glove Award. For his career, he won 16, and this came in consecutive seasons from 1960 to 1974. Only Greg Maddux, with 18 Gold Gloves, has more than Brooks for an MLB career. As you may have guessed, Brooks was widely regarded as one of the best fielders in baseball, and in historical retrospect, he is considered to be the greatest defensive third baseman of all time. In 1966, the Orioles added another key player to complement Brooks Robinson, and that player is Frank Robinson. To further discuss Frank Robinson, take it away, Hatbilly.
I appreciate Cam for allowing me to collaborate on this. Consider it a microcosm of the dynamic between Brooks and Frank, coming together from opposite ends of the country for one common focus, the Baltimore Orioles, of course. Frank Robinson was the youngest of 10 children raised by a single mother in a low-income tenement dwelling in West Oakland, California. Suffice it to say, nothing in life came easy to Frank in Oakland except for athletics. Get it? Notably, this same neighborhood also produced his eventual Cincinnati teammate, Vada Pinson. Frank was signed by the Cincinnati Reds the day after he graduated from McClemens High School in 1953, and he immediately embarked on a trying minor league journey through Class C Ogden, Utah, and Single A Columbia, South Carolina, experiencing a level of institutional racism he had not seen in Northern California. He refused to let off-field issues distract him from an inspiring 1956 Rookie of the Year season. Many theorize that, rather than lash out, Frank channeled these frustrations into his style of play on the diamond. Frank crowded the plate, daring pitchers to go inside on him, and many obliged. Frank led the National League 6 times in the hit-by-pitch category. He was hit 198 times over the course of his career. He didn't shy away from conflict on the base paths either. Frank would slide leading with a high cleat to break up the double play, so naturally, he was hated by opposing middle infielders. This would be on display in a nasty fistfight between Frank and fellow power-hitting Hall of Famer Eddie Matthews in 1960. What a heavyweight main event that had to be. As history's irony would have it, 1960 was also the year of the emergence of a one Cassius Clay, who would soon change his name to Muhammad Ali. 1961 was a banner year for National League MVP Frank Robinson, batting .323 with 37 home runs and 124 RBIs. The Reds would win the pennant. His production was steady until 1965, when Cincinnati owner Bill DeWitt dealt Robinson to Baltimore. DeWitt cited him as, quote, an old 30 and a fading talent increasingly hobbled by leg injuries, but the Orioles tended to disagree. On the tail end of a May 8th doubleheader against the league-leading Cleveland Indians, Frank faced Louis Tillon, riding a streak of 3 consecutive shutouts. Frank completely obliterated a first-pitch fastball that went 540 feet. It was the only home run to completely leave Memorial Stadium and land in the parking lot. It rivals Jose Canseco's 1989 ALCS moonshot in the Toronto Sky Dome as one of the farthest balls ever hit. This was the first of 2 notable occurrences that would forever endear Frank to his new ball club. The second, well, it was a close call. At a late summer team party, Frank, who unbeknownst to his teammates could not swim, fell in a pool. Rookie catcher Andy Etchebarren made the comment, "Boy, Frank sure has been at the bottom of that pool a while," before diving in to his rescue. Frank said he contemplated the news headlines while submerged. Quote, Bill DeWitt gets the last laugh, Frank Robinson drowns at team party. Once revived, Robinson somehow hit another gear, and this cemented a Triple Crown season. 49 home runs, 122 runs batted in, and a .316 average.
After Frank's superb 1966 regular season performance, his job was not finished. The Orioles won 97 games that year, winning the American League pennant. In 1966, if you finished first in the league, you went to the World Series. Their opponent from the National League was the Los Angeles Dodgers, a storied franchise that had a starting rotation in 1966 that ranks among the best of all time. Their rotation contained 3 Hall of Famers, much like the Atlanta Braves' Big Three that I discussed in my Tony Gwynn versus the Braves Big Three video, which you should definitely check out after watching this video. Sandy Koufax, Don Drysdale, and Don Sutton were the 3 Hall of Famers, but Claude Osteen was prioritized over then-rookie Don Sutton. This made for a favorable matchup for LA. However, the Dodgers forgot who they were dealing with, a potent offense that consisted of 2 Robinsons who finished first and second in MVP voting. Game 1 was a spectacle. The pitching was shaky for both sides as Don Drysdale and Dave McNally both got the early hook after allowing several runs and were unable to keep the ball in the yard. Who better to start off the scoring than Frank Robinson taking Drysdale deep in the first inning to get the Orioles on top 2-0. Next up for the Orioles after the long ball was the other Robinson. As if it was scripted, Brooks went back-to-back with Frank, hitting a dinger of his own off Drysdale to make it a 3-0 Orioles lead. After Dave McNally was pulled in the 3rd inning, it was a wonder as to how the Orioles would navigate through the rest of this game. But reliever Mo Drabowski was a miracle worker as he fired 6 2/3 scoreless innings, striking out 11 Dodgers to nail down a 5-2 Orioles win. 1 down, 3 to go. Considering the Dodgers were a juggernaut of a team and had Sandy Koufax lined up for Game 2, this series would surely be competitive. Taking the mound for Baltimore to battle Koufax was a young, 20-year-old Jim Palmer, the future ace and Hall of Famer who would go on to post a 2.86 career ERA and won 3 Cy Young Awards. But in 1966, he was a first-year full-time starter and posted a 3.46 ERA in 30 starts throughout the regular season. Jim Palmer in this game would give Orioles fans a preview of things to come. Palmer and Koufax were both lights out innings 1 through 4. As a result of an error and a double hit by Louis Aparicio, the Orioles capitalized on the miscue by center fielder Willie Davis and were able to get to Koufax and put up a 3 spot in the 5th inning. Palmer held his ground and continued to put up zeros. In the top of the 6th, Koufax took the mound after an unlucky inning in which he surrendered 3 runs, all of which were unearned. Frank Robinson stepped up to the plate to lead off the inning. Frank clutched up and drove a triple the other way to bring up the other Robinson. Brooks Robinson unfortunately was unable to drive in Frank as he popped out to first base in foul territory. Orioles first baseman Boog Powell and founder of Boog's Barbecue at Camden Yards was able to drive in Frank with a single to right field to make it a 4-0 ballgame. The Orioles were able to put up 2 more insurance runs in the 8th inning before Jim Palmer was able to close the door on the Dodgers' hopes of tying up the series, throwing a complete game shutout. In his first ever postseason start, the 20-year-old took down a baseball giant, no pun intended, in Sandy Koufax. With a 2-0 series lead, the Orioles continued to trek onward. Claude Osteen received the ball against Wally Bunker, owner of a 4.29 ERA. For Game 3, the odds were stacked heavily against the Orioles winning 3 straight, especially with a guy of Bunker's caliber going up against Osteen, who had put together a season in which he posted a 2.85 ERA and had thrown 8 complete games, 3 of which were shutouts. Nonetheless, there was no telling how this game would eventually unfold. Like in Game 2, the first 4 innings were a pitcher's duel. Then in the 5th inning, the improbable occurred. Claude Osteen, who led the league in home runs per 9, giving up a minuscule 0.2 home runs per 9 in 1966, surrendered a 2-out dinger to Orioles center fielder Paul Blair. In over 240 innings, Osteen gave up just 6 home runs, but all it took was 5 innings in the World Series for him to give up the long ball. And how about our guy Wally Bunker? Mr. Bunker threw himself an absolute gem and did his best Jim Palmer impersonation, throwing a complete game shutout. To be fair to Wally Bunker, his season from 2 years prior in 1964, he finished second in Rookie of the Year voting. But still, he didn't have a great year prior to the World Series, yet he was able to outduel the Dodgers' Claude Osteen. The Orioles somehow held on to a 1-0 lead this game, shutting out LA for a second straight game. The Dodgers were now in a precarious position. They were down 3 games to none. While they still had rookie Don Sutton fresh and ready to go for Game 4, they would instead opt to bring back Don Drysdale 4 days after a rough start in Game 1. The Orioles would recreate the Game 1 matchup by sending Dave McNally to pitch against Drysdale. McNally decided to bring his A game, but so did Drysdale. Through 3 innings, both pitchers looked locked in. Frank Robinson was due up in the bottom of the 4th. So far this series, he had been a key contributor, hitting a Game 1 home run and scoring a pair of runs in Game 2. After a quiet Game 3, this was his chance to kickstart an Orioles rally. However, he opted to be his own one-man wrecking crew and decided to blast a home run off of Don Drysdale to give the Orioles a 1-0 lead. Dave McNally would need nothing more. He faced just 3 more than the minimum and cemented the Orioles' first World Series championship in franchise history. Combined throughout the series, the Dodgers scored just 2 runs, both of which came in Game 1.
Wow.
Frank Robinson, after slugging .857 and hitting 2 bombs, was named World Series MVP. After an All-Star appearance, a regular season MVP, and a World Series win all in his first year with the Orioles, Frank was everything the Orioles could have ever asked for. The Robinsons in their first year together became one of baseball's most iconic duos. After this fairy tale 1966 season came to a close, Brooks Robinson remained a key player for the Orioles. He finished top 25 in 4 of the ensuing 5 seasons, 2 of which were top 10 finishes. He continued to flash the leather on a daily basis. The Orioles would return to the World Series against the Cincinnati Reds in 1970, and this time it was Brooks' turn to steal the show, much like Frank did in 1966. Brooks consistently made outstanding defensive plays and would hit .429 with 2 homers, earning him MVP honors for the series. The Robinsons would play just 1 more season together following this World Series, but they were able to build their Hall of Fame careers together, and that was something to behold. I'm honestly a little jealous I wasn't around to take part in the beholding, to be frank. Sorry, that was a bad joke. One last thing before Hatbilly takes over again is a quote from Frank after being asked about Brooks' historically great defense. He was the best defensive player at any position. I used to stand in the outfield like a fan and watch him make play after play. I used to think, wow, I can't believe this.
In June of 1967, as a downside of his no-holds-barred style of play, Frank collided with Al Weiss and suffered a concussion and prolonged double vision that lingered, and his production at the plate took a nosedive the next few seasons. In '68, with a reference from none other than Earl Weaver, Frank accepted his first assignment as the manager of the Santurce Crabbers in the Puerto Rican Winter League, before returning to Baltimore and having a resurgence during the '69 season that saw him bat .308 with 32 home runs and an even 100 RBIs. Around this time, Frank would create a locker room spin-off of Rowan and Martin's Laugh In, based on Sammy Davis Jr.'s character, the Judge, where he would wear a mop wig and sentence players for crimes such as missing the cutoff man or being late to catch the team bus. The Birds would fall to the Miracle Mets that October. They would return to the World Series in '70 to dispatch Frank's former Cincinnati teammates, and again in '71 falling to Pittsburgh. After leading Baltimore to 4 pennants in 6 years, a surprised Frank Robinson was traded to the Dodgers and again in short order to the Angels before landing in Cleveland in September of '74. After the Indians' disappointing collapse while chasing the pennant, manager Ken Aspromonte was fired, and Frank Robinson was named the manager. This made him the first African-American Major League manager in history. He famously utilized himself as a pinch hitter in his first game as a manager, crushing a home run that would win the game for the Tribe. He would also manage the Giants and serve as a hitting coach for the Orioles in the '80s before moving up to the front office. He was at the helm of the struggling Expos franchise in the early 2000s, keeping them in the pennant race in '02 and '03 despite limited resources. He made the move to DC with the team in 2005 and retired from baseball completely in '06, exactly 50 years in Major League Baseball. When asked for his thoughts on Frank's legacy within the game of baseball, Brooks Robinson said, "Frank was about winning, and when we won with him, we won something more than baseball games. We won as people."
Brooks and Frank Robinson are the two biggest icons of Baltimore's glory days, a time frame in which they made the World Series 4 times in 6 years. They also are two of the most underrated and underappreciated Hall of Famers in the history of baseball. Brooks played 23 years, all with the Orioles. On the other hand, Frank may have only spent 6 years in Baltimore, but left a lasting impression on Orioles fans that still lives on today. They had completely different upbringings, but nonetheless, through their respective journeys, were able to find each other suiting up for the same team for 6 years, before parting ways again, only to once again find each other in Cooperstown, forever enshrined as Baltimore Orioles. Brooks Robinson was my grandfather's all-time favorite player, so making this video definitely holds a special place in my heart, and I'm really happy to finally be making this video. This video would not have been possible without the efforts of Hatbilly, so thank you for reaching out and sparking this awesome collaboration. Make sure to subscribe to his channel because he's got some fantastic baseball content. Let me know in the comments down below your thoughts on today's video. Make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing if you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.